Consider for a moment that you could read a covert letter from someone who was present and witnessed everything. Someone like Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor who ordered Jesus' crucifixion. But why would a powerful Roman leader take the time to write down his thoughts about a Jewish teacher in a small, far-off province of the empire? There's a story that Pilate sent a report to the Roman Emperor Tiberius describing everything that happened with Jesus, from the miracles to the trial, and finally, the crucifixion. This isn't just some myth. There are actual ancient texts that claim to include parts of Pilate's letter. According to some accounts, Pilate wasn't just writing a simple report. He was defending his actions, trying to explain why he made the decisions he did. He talks about the challenges he faced in governing Judea, the rumors he heard about Jesus, and the difficult position he found himself in. Pilate presents a description of Jesus that deviates from our typical understanding. He even mentions details about Jesus' appearance that don't match up with the traditional image most of us have in our minds. If Pilate's letter is real, it could change the way we see everything from ancient history to modern faith. And that's why this story is so important. It's not just about what happened 2,000 years ago. It's about how those events still echo in our lives today. To understand Pilate's situation, let's step back to 26 AD, when he first took charge as the prefect of Judea under Emperor Tiberius. Judea was a powder keg, home to proud and rebellious people who despised Roman rule. Pilate's authority came directly from Rome, but with that power came enormous pressure. His primary duty was to keep the peace, but doing so in Judea was no easy task. The Jewish people were fiercely protective of their religion and customs, and they viewed the Romans as pagan oppressors. Any sign of weakness or misjudgment could lead to riots, and Pilate had seen firsthand how quickly unrest could spread. The people's resistance constantly tested Pilate's rule. He knew that a major revolt could cost him not just his position, but also his life. The fear of failing his duty was very real. Rome did not tolerate failure, especially from its governors. Pilate had to be ruthless, calculating, and decisive, because one wrong move could mean the end for him. Amidst this tense atmosphere, word began to spread about Jesus of Nazareth. Pilate must have heard rumors about this man who preached about a kingdom not of this world, who healed the sick and fed the hungry. At first, Pilate might have dismissed these stories as the usual religious fervor that often flared up in Judea, but as Jesus' following grew, so did the danger he posed, not just to the Jewish authorities, but to Roman rule itself. For Pilate, the situation was complicated. On one hand, Jesus spoke words that were not directly against Rome. He even said, "Render unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's." This might have seemed like a sign that Jesus wasn't a threat to Roman authority. However, the Jewish leaders exerted pressure on Pilate, asserting that Jesus posed a threat that required attention. They saw him as a threat to their own power and to the fragile peace between the Jews and the Romans. This is where Pilate found himself in a dangerous game of power. Pilate found himself torn between the Jewish leaders' desire to remove Jesus and the Roman laws, which mandated him to act justly. While some may view the execution of an innocent man as a gross injustice, allowing a potential revolutionary to live could spark chaos and rebellion. The stakes were incredibly high. In the letter Pilate supposedly wrote to Emperor Tiberius, he paints a picture of the impossible situation he faced. He describes the turbulent people of Jerusalem, the lack of sufficient military support, and the constant threat of uprising. Pilate didn't have the luxury of time or resources. His army was small, just a single centurion and a few soldiers to control the entire city of Jerusalem, a city that was notorious for its unrest. Pilate's letter suggests that he saw Jesus as more of a friend to Rome than an enemy. Jesus wasn't inciting violence against the Romans. He was more focused on critiquing the Jewish leaders. But the fear of an uprising, fueled by the Jewish leaders' accusations, forced Pilate into a corner. He needed to act, and he needed to do so in a way that would keep the peace, even if it meant sacrificing an innocent man. Pilate's fear wasn't just about a single decision, it was about losing control over Judea and, by extension, his career and life. In a province where one spark could ignite a revolution, Pilate had to tread carefully. The decision to condemn Jesus wasn't just about maintaining law and order, it was about holding on to power in a situation where the stakes couldn't be higher. What Pilate wrote about Jesus in his letter is extremely shocking, not just because of the details he includes, but because of what it reveals about the pressures he was under. The letter gives us a glimpse into the mind of a man who was forced to make an impossible choice, one that would have lasting consequences for history. One of the most striking aspects of the letter is how Pilate describes Jesus. He portrays him not as a threat to Roman authority, but rather as a man of wisdom and calm, someone who spoke in ways that even impressed the Romans. Pilate mentions that Jesus' teachings didn't incite rebellion. Instead, they promoted a sort of peace, even if it was a peace that challenged the Jewish authorities more than the Roman rulers. This raises a crucial question. If Jesus wasn't a direct threat to Rome, why did Pilate ultimately decide to hand him over for crucifixion? To answer that question, we need to consider the political dynamics at play. Pilate's letter suggests that a more intricate game of power, rather than a simple desire to maintain order, drove his decision. The Jewish leaders were adamant that Jesus was a danger to their own authority and to the fragile peace they had with Rome. They brought Jesus to Pilate not just because they saw him as a blasphemer, but because they knew that condemning Jesus would eliminate a figure who threatened their control over the people. Pilate, however, was in a bind. On one hand, he needed to keep the Jewish leaders happy to prevent any unrest that could escalate into a full-blown rebellion. However, he also had to adhere to Roman law, which prohibited the execution of an innocent man. The letter hints at Pilate's hesitation. He didn't want to kill Jesus, but the pressure from the Jewish authorities and the fear of an uprising left him with few options. Pilate's decision to crucify Jesus was not just an act of judgment, it was a strategic move to maintain his own position and prevent larger conflicts. Another fascinating part of Pilate's letter is his description of Jesus' physical appearance. Pilate notes that Jesus had golden hair and a serene countenance, details that stand out because they don't match the traditional Middle Eastern appearance most would expect. This description has sparked debates among historians and theologians. Was this an accurate portrayal, or was it a later addition by those who copied the letter over centuries? The response could alter our comprehension of the perception of Jesus during his era. This description might seem like a minor detail, but it could be a crucial piece of the puzzle. Pilate's account, if accurate, suggests that people saw Jesus as unique, even in his physical appearance. The awe and fear he inspired in those around him may have stemmed from his uniqueness, making him a figure that both the Jewish authorities and the Roman governor could not ignore. Perhaps just as telling as what Pilate includes in his letter is what he leaves out. There's a noticeable absence of direct accusations against Jesus. Pilate doesn't describe him as a revolutionary or a criminal. Instead, he focuses on the political tensions that led to the crucifixion. This omission speaks volumes. It suggests that Pilate's decision was less about what Jesus had done and more about the circumstances surrounding him. Pilate's letter seems to imply that the crucifixion was not an act of justice, but a necessary evil to keep the peace. This subtlety is crucial in understanding the letter's true significance. Pilate may have been trying to justify his actions to Emperor Tiberius by emphasizing the difficult position he was in, rather than openly admitting that Jesus posed no real threat to Roman rule. The letter, therefore, serves as both a confession and a defense, a way for Pilate to explain his actions without fully admitting to the injustice of them. Various ancient texts, such as the Acts of Pilate and later the Gospel of Nicodemus, allegedly include the letter. Early church leaders did not accept these texts into the official canon of Scripture, placing them in a category known as apocryphal literature. This raises an immediate red flag about the letter's reliability. If the early church didn't include it in the Bible, was it because they questioned its authenticity? Perhaps it was because it didn't align with the narratives they were trying to promote. The preservation of the letter in these less official texts indicates its importance to early Christians, although it may have undergone modifications. Over the centuries, scribes often copied stories and documents by hand, adding their own interpretations or embellishments. This possibility casts a shadow of doubt over the letter's content. Did Pilate write the letter we have today, or did those who came after him alter it to suit their agendas? One of the most debated aspects of Pilate's letter is his description of Jesus' physical appearance. Pilate describes Jesus as having golden hair and a serene, almost celestial presence, traits that stand out because they don't match the typical Middle Eastern appearance most historians would expect. This is where the authenticity of the letter comes into sharp focus. If this description was added later, it suggests that the letter was tampered with to create a more idealized image of Jesus, one that aligned with the European depictions that would dominate Christian art in the centuries that followed. On the other hand, if the description is accurate, it challenges many of the assumptions we have about what Jesus looked like, potentially altering the way we think about him historically. Alternatively, political reasons could have motivated the changes. As Christianity spread throughout the Roman Empire and beyond, there was a need to present a unified and compelling image of Jesus that could appeal to a broader audience. The letter's original portrayal of Jesus as too human and ordinary could have hindered its effectiveness in promoting the faith. Enhancing Jesus' physical description could have been a way to make him more universally appealing. The possibility of altering Pilate's letter forces us to face an uncomfortable reality. The biases and intentions of those who recorded historical events might shape much of what we think we know about them. Should Pilate's portrayal of Jesus undergo alterations, what other aspects of the letter could also have undergone alterations? This doubt casts a shadow over the entire document, making it difficult to take any part of it at face value. But this doesn't mean we should dismiss the letter entirely. Despite its alterations, the letter still offers valuable insights into the early Christians' view of Jesus and their desire for his memory. The changes themselves reveal significant insights into the development of Christian thought and the portrayal of Jesus to various audiences over time. The potential alterations in Pilate's letter highlight the influence of those who record history. As we've discussed, the descriptions in the letter, reflecting reality or altered to fit a particular narrative, illustrate the ease with which we can shape the past to serve various purposes. Regardless of its authenticity, this letter forces us to face the fact that the victors, or in this case, those with the most compelling story to tell, often write history. It makes us reconsider the narratives we've been told and reminds us that there is always more than one side to every story. The image of Jesus, as portrayed in this letter, might not align perfectly with the traditional depictions we're familiar with, but that discrepancy itself is a valuable insight. It demonstrates the ability to mold historical figures to suit the requirements of various generations. What makes Pilate's letter so fascinating is that it remains an unsolved mystery. We may never be able to definitively determine the extent of its authenticity and the extent of its alteration. But perhaps that's what keeps this document so intriguing. It's a piece of history that continues to challenge us, prompting new questions and encouraging deeper reflection. Facts alone do not shape our understanding of historical events. The presentation and interpretation of those facts over time also shape our understanding. Pilate's letter, whether genuine or embellished, is a testament to the enduring power of narrative. It reminds us that the stories we tell about the past are not just about what happened, but about what we choose to remember and how we make sense of it in the present. For generations to come, the mystery of Pilate's letter will continue to provoke thought, debate, and reflection. The shocking details it contains, real or imagined, ensure that it will remain a topic of fascination and study. a reminder that history's most compelling stories are often the ones that leave us with more questions than answers.